Welcome everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss why voting yes for Tesla and Elon's comp package is not enough to save Tesla. And here's why. What we saw in the Delaware court decision is that we are dealing with an activist judge that is fundamentally in disagreement with our values. And with values, I mean our ideas about being allowed to contract with each other, forming contracts between shareholders and executives, protecting our property, and the principles that if you strike a valid contract, that you can keep whatever comes out of that, especially if both parties agree. She is fundamentally of a different opinion. And here's why this matters. So first, what she's basically saying is no to private contracts. Private contracts can be overruled by a judge who disagrees on the content of the contracts, despite both parties agreeing. She says no to the right of shareholders to do deals with their own executives and their boards. And she makes very clear in her opinion, literally clear, word by word, that 20% equity in a company is more than enough, is fully sufficient to motivate a CEO and an entrepreneur, and that this entrepreneur and CEO does not need more equity and does not need any compensation, and that Elon should not ask for more. She also says that 5% carry is too much and an unnecessary compensation. When you do the math on Elon's comp package, it's basically the equivalent of a 5% carry. For those of you who don't know what that means, if you manage a venture fund, private equity fund, or hedge fund, if you make $100,000 or $100 million in gains for your investors, you keep 20% normally, right? So you keep 20 million. That's called a 20% carry. Elon had the equivalent of a 5% carry. Right? If he makes 1,200%, he's allowed to keep 6% of that. So she determines that this 5% carry, 6% of 1,200%, is too much. It's an unnecessary compensation, therefore illegal. It can be overruled and you can take away that property, expropriate Elon. She also said, if you don't clock in and out every day, if you don't have a contract as a fund manager, as a manager of a company, as a entrepreneur, if you don't clock in and out every day with a work schedule, you do not deserve to be compensated. So I think any one of you who knows what an entrepreneur does, or a CEO or like a manager, you don't clock in and out. You always work. It just either demonstrates an incredible level of ignorance, but I think it's worse than ignorance. She's just conveying to us that she thinks we as Tesla shareholders are a bunch of silly clowns that shouldn't be taken seriously. What that means and why it's so important and why it's more than just the Tesla voters, that she also prepares the ground for retroactively taking away every fund manager's carry and incentive allocation, every entrepreneur's equity comp plan, if that entrepreneur owns more than 20% of a company, and overruling any shareholder agreement that, covers any of these compensations. She's not only preparing the ground for that. If she doesn't want to get struck down by the Supreme Court for judicial inconsistency, for, impartial application of the law, of the rule of law, she has to do it. Because she can't just single out Elon and treat him in a certain way. She has to treat everyone the same way. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have actually more aggressive compensation plans on a percentage level. So we are in big trouble here, in very big trouble. The American system of justice is in big trouble. And corporate law, in Delaware at least, is completely under attack. And that's a very big, very, very bad news. So we are dealing here with a judge and court that just fundamentally disagrees with established notions of contracting, free markets, and you can tell in her opinion, she would probably not even contest that she fundamentally believes no one has the right to make that much money. Elon is already in the wrong because he has too much money. That means even if he gets a comp vote yes, here's my important point. The idea that the shareholders voting again on the same thing with yes is going to resolve the problem, and the judge and the court is going to say, oh, now, and second time you do it, we get it, right? No. We also saw, people don't totally understand the opinion she wrote. She was very clear when you read between the lines that she just hates Elon, and she doesn't like how much money he makes. This has nothing to do with informing the shareholders, and it has nothing to do with voting, shareholders voting, because the shareholders already voted for it. in 2018 and she struck it down. She never actually said that the board deceived the shareholders or was intransparent with shareholders about the compensation. She argued that the board was intransparent with the shareholders about the conflict of interest of the board, which is completely unimportant. Who cares about that? Number one, it's not true. And number two, no one cares. Because the board was very transparent about the compensation plan. So she does not contest that shareholders in 2018 understood the compensation plan. She does not claim they were deceived or it was intransparent what the compensation plan is. They voted on yes for Elon. She says they were not transparent enough about their own conflict of interest, which I don't even understand how this is related. And so what that means is she can strike it down again. What we have to understand is that the legal system in itself, that's a big misconception about legal systems. A legal system or the rule of law does not exist. That is a completely blue-pilled perspective on the world. There is no rule of law. There is a rule of courts and culture. Because law is just words. They need to be interpreted and applied by courts. And courts decide based on their culture. And if you have the wrong courts and the wrong culture, all the law in the world is not going to save you from really bad things. And we just saw this in Delaware. You can always make any kind of argument for any kind of ruling. If there are more courts or more judges coming in to support her, we are just screwed, right? This is all about culture in the end. And we can, based on that, we can be confident that the Supreme Court of the United States in the end will probably strike it down if it gets there. But we don't even know what happens in the appeals court. So what I'm saying is we have to get out of the idea that there is something we can fix to force this court, like we can fix legally. We have to get out of the idea that there were legal flaws on this decision. There were no legal flaws on this decision. It was a valid contract between the shareholders and Elon. And the fact that this is being overruled is a sign that the court has fundamentally different perspectives on the whole thing. And so the vote will not help. The only thing that helps is the appeals process, but will take some time, and the understanding on our side that this is a cultural war we are in, and that we can win this war. We can win it actually earlier than the appeals process. We can make the judge make a different decision if she feels she's getting a lot of pressure from her peers, for example, or from the Supreme Court of Delaware, or from the governor. So we have to understand this is nothing you fix legally. This is a joke. This is a complete joke that you can fix this legally, because the legal argument is a little bit of a joke. This is a cultural argument. The cultural argument is shareholders don't care. We don't care what shareholders think. The court is in charge of making these decisions. If you make too much money, we can take it away. And this can only be fixed by fixing the notion and the culture, by standing up against it and do something about it. And convince, whoever is in charge of telling this judge to change her approach to the law, which is her boss, whoever that is, maybe the Supreme Court, to rule her in. That's the only thing that works here. I think the good news is that if the Tesla community continues to fight and stands up and understands these principles, we will inevitably win this. Because what happened here is a complete violation of all precedents. And it's also something that will undermine the entire legal system and undermine all kinds of, if they are judicially consistent, it will undermine everything that happens in Delaware. You can now take away all the money from all these companies. It's going to be an implosion of the entire economy. So I think if we stand up and make clear they can't do that, that we understand what happened here, and that we are speaking up against it, that is the fight we need to win. That is the fight we need to win. It's a cultural and it's to some extent a political fight, where we need to make very clear that every fund manager, every entrepreneur, every VC understands that this ruling is the end of American innovation. If you're not very cautious and get this rectified. This is not just about Tesla, it's about the entire thing. So it's time to fight. And I hope you join me in my part 2 of this series, where we go into the master plan to defeat this social justice court and make sure justice, truth, and freedom are restored. Thank you.